Army colonel and a streetwise cop.
What we've got here is a multi-jurisdictional investigation.
This is my command here.
The only thing tougher than solving the crime is having to do it together.
You think that Lawrence is the only one involved in all this? Deal with CIA.
Academy Award winner Sean Connery, Mark Harmon of Presidio. Rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
Folks, I'm Jeff Gallishaw at Unfinished Business B2, host of Unfinished Business Dive. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
Do you know the restaurant in San Francisco?
Yes, where we have a Scottish man in the army. If you don't recognize where all these clues of this movie are coming from, then you obviously haven't seen The Presidio from 1988, starring Mark Harmon, Sean Connery, Meg Ryan, Jack Warden, Mark Bloom, and what's winning reunion? It's Jeanette Goldstein outside of a James Cameron movie. Don Calstock, Larry Flash Chicken.
I forgot he was in this.
How you gonna have the Presidio without the Flash? Jesse D. Owens. And the infamous henchman of loads of action films, Patrick Kilpatrick. It's all in the name, folks. Thanks. So, Andre, this is your pick of a deep dive. Tell us about Peter Hyam's thriller, The Presidio.
Yeah, so Presidio, the basic story is you have Jeanette Goldstein playing a military MP working at the Presidio Army base in San Francisco. There's a break-in the officers' club. She goes to check on it, and she gets shot and killed. There's this wild chase between the police and the suspected shooter, and after this little bullet-style chase at night, the shooter makes it out, and escapes. Mark Harmon is a former MP. Now he's a San Francisco detective. He gets called onto the scene, and he encounters Sean Connery's character. I think it's Colonel or Major Alan Caldwell. He's the provost marshal at the Presidio. And these guys have a history because Connery was responsible for having Harmon's character kicked out of the army after an incident where he stopped this other colonel who had a drunk driving incident, and he was giving him some shit with the partner who happened to be the murdered girl. So it's personal for Harmon. And so now they're forced to work together to find out who the killer is. While they're doing this investigation, at the same time, Harmon gets attracted to Connery's daughter, played by Meg Ryan, who has daddy issues and commitment issues, but nonetheless, they start hooking up and he starts falling for her, but she's like kind of, she doesn't want that commitment. She's kind of playing games with him. And as the murder plot goes along, he suspects it's the guy that he stopped years ago, the colonel, when they find out that the gun used on his ex-partner is the same gun this guy owned and lost in a poker game, apparently. But after a wild chase in Chinatown, the guy gets hit by a car, and now it seems like, oh, maybe the case is over. No, Connery thinks somebody else has a hand in it, and he's suspecting this holding company guy, played by Mark Blum, whose car was reported stolen, and he starts to look at the coasters on his table, and he sees like there's this thing with Saigon that kind of triggers something in his mind, and finds out he works for the CIA, or used to work for CIA, and something's going on here. Why are these water bottle plants, like, why are all of them dry, but one's like super wet, and there's a whole conspiracy that happens, and ultimately they uncover what's really going on, which is diamonds are being smuggled from the Philippines through these gallons of water tanks and being put into different spots and so forth, and they're manufacturing them, making money, whatever. Like I said, there's going to be a reason why we're going to criticize this movie in a second, but let me get into the backstory of how this film came about. So it originated with Larry Ferguson, who later on went to write The Hunt for Red October, previously had co-written Highlander. Originally was supposed to star Lee Marvin and Jeff Bridges in the two roles, but Lee Marvin fell sick and ultimately passed away. They were looking at Gene Hackman to replace him for a while, but that didn't work out. Then Jeff Bridges passed on the project. And while he was working on it, Don Simpson decided to hire Ferguson to write Beverly Hills Cop 2. He impressed him in a meeting when he showed him how to disarm a gun without having to look at it. Like, he could talk while disarming this thing and putting it all, the pieces together. So he got the job based off of that. And I guess along the way, he befriended the film's director, Tony Scott. And I guess he loved the original concept for this movie, which originally was supposed to be drugs being smuggled through alcohol bottles that were being delivered to the officers club. So he really wanted to do this movie because I guess it reminded him of Lethal Weapon or something like that. He liked the dynamic of the two characters, and that was going to be his next movie. But the Army got involved, apparently, and there were things in the script that they did not like with the relationship of the two characters, and they didn't like the drugs. Yeah, so they wrote this whole letter that had to result in a major rewrite, and I guess Tony Scott decided, I'm not going to do this movie. I'm going to go off and do something else. By this point, they got Sean Connery, who's coming off this comeback role in The Untouchables, and they were hoping he would reteam with Kevin Costner for the role of Jay Austen. My guess is Costner had just done really two thrillers, Untouchables and No Way Out, and really didn't want to do another thriller, so he decided, I want to do this little baseball movie called Bull Durham over at Orion, so he passed on it, and I guess Connery wasn't happy about it. Looked at Don Johnson to replace him, but he was doing Miami Vice, so that wasn't going to work. So they needed a guy to team up with Connery, so they said, well, why don't we get Mark Harmon, because he had just done Summer School. He had a production deal with Paramount. They thought he was going to be the next big thing in Hollywood. So let's get Mark Harmon. He's a good-looking guy. And Meg Ryan, she hadn't had that breakout movie yet. She had just done Armed and Dangerous, which we just reviewed, and she was in Inner Space, one of my favorite films of the 80s.
Didn't she do Top Gun before this, too?
Yes, that's right. So I think she was cast in this one, because remember, she auditioned for Kelly McGillis's part, didn't get it, so they made her Goose's wife. And I guess Tony Scott wanted to return the favor and give her the lead female role. But at this point, Tony Scott was out of here. So Peter Hyams stepped in, and I'm thinking either he was recommended by Connery, having worked with him on Outland in 81, or that he heard they needed a director. Like, I really want to work with Connery again, because he loves Sean Connery so much. And he was coming off one of our favorite movies, Running Scared. So he had some clout between that and 2010, the year we made contact. And he had 12 weeks to get this film together, and he was able to rewrite the script. He added all the chase scenes, like the car chase.
He, as always, he was his own cinematographer.
Yes, he was also the DP as well, and he brought in some of his regulars like Don Calfa to play some of the supporting parts. And he basically, I think they expected this to be a huge movie. So huge, they tried to go after Marlon Brando to play Jack Warden's part, and he turned it down in the end. That's why they had those lengthy dialogue scenes. They probably thought it was going to be powerful seeing Brando and Connery together, and that didn't happen.
Those are just two people I cannot imagine getting along.
No, I think there would have been some fistfights.
Exactly.
So the way that I first heard about this film when I was a kid, I used to pass by the box all the time at the video store. Never knew anything about this movie. I didn't know if it was like a romantic film or a drama or whatever. And Connery, I only had seen it in Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. So this was like, I don't know what this is. But then after I saw Running Scared for the first time and saw that, Peter Hyams did all these movies, I wanted to check out the Presidio, because since it was his first film after that. And I didn't hate it, but you see, the thing I always took issue with was that it feels like two movies. It feels like you have a murder investigation plot where these two guys don't get along, and it's basically 48 hours with no comedy in it. In fact, I would say it's a knockoff of Lethal Weapon, the old guy and kind of the Frisco young cop. And then you have this love story with Mark Harmon and Meg Ryan, which seems like maybe it was either a reshoot or to please his female fans, because you have this unnecessary car chase between them after they have dinner. And then they have this hot, wild sex scene, which, if you have the European cut, it's a lot longer and a little bit more thrusting going on.
I did not see that version.
If you go on some porno sites, you can find it.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so like it seemed like that you have this drama going on, but there's never like a interconnection between the two other than just, I guess, get the guys to get along ultimately at the end. And it's not a terrible film. Mark Harmon does a really good action. There's a lot of cool stuff. The famous fighting with the thumb scene with the guy from Over the Top inside the diner, Connery, to show he's still a badass at his age. So you got that stuff, but the mystery plot isn't really all that mysterious. It's very pedestrian. I always love the way Peter Hyams shoots, but there's some scenes you could tell were shot in the studio. Some of the stuff in San Francisco at night, and the scene in the Blackwater Mountain Company factory. So you got those things, but I think what brings it down, unfortunately, is our friend Mr. Harmon. Connery, it's implausible. Okay, Sean Connery, a Scottishman in the American Army, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. As long as it's that guy, you're going to buy into anything he does because he's a badass. But Mark Harmon, every time he's on screen with Connery, he is literally shrinking, because I think it's like he's trying to rely so much on his TV persona and
look, and
the charm with the ladies and such, which it worked well with Summer School, because at least he had kind of a straight man to all the wacky characters in that classroom, and he does comedy pretty well. But as a guy trying to be like Costner or Don Johnson or anybody else, I don't buy it, because I think you guys once said when we did a Cinephiles episode about One Hit Wonders, he's just a nice guy. I don't buy him as a badass cop. He does stunts really well. Personality-wise, I don't buy this guy in a fight scene, and I think that's what really hurts this film. As much as Connery is the guy that's kind of front and center because he's the legend, you could tell the movie was designed to make Harmon the next big action star, and it fails. So what were your memories of the Presidio?
I remember my dad had a copy of it. Well, he taped it off of a VHS copy, and he had another movie. So I remember constantly as a kid fast forwarding through it to get to the movie that was after it. But this actually, it's a movie I've always heard about, but until you chose it as a deep dive, I had never watched it. And so this was my first time watching it. And watching it, first I want to add to some of the things that you said in your thing. Like, I just imagine Costner looking at the thing and like, you want me to co-star with another old man again? And when do I get to be the dominant one? That's A. I can imagine Connery on that rooftop scene with Marlon Brando. Like, how's he going to get his fat ass to the roof? And then, what's with this fucking guy in method? All he has to do is play a Vietnam vet.
Shut up, you cunt!
And I can just imagine Marlon Brando say, I don't understand anything he's saying. And he loses the accent. So there's that. I kept wondering, Meg Ryan has this expensive car. What the fuck does she do for a living in this movie?
Yeah, didn't never say. Well, she lives off the father.
Then shit, she does have to live by his rules then. I agree. And, like, get a job. And then maybe I'll be emotional with you.
Another problem with this movie, nobody likes anybody. They're constantly having dialogue about, I don't like him. He doesn't like me. Maybe she likes him. Nobody likes anybody.
But you know who comes through all right in the end? Flash Jenkins.
That's true.
No, but the scene that really shows Mark Harmon's, again, he's a nice guy, but he wasn't made for the material. Keep in mind, he was a last-minute replacement, too.
Yeah.
But that cop scene with Don Taufa,
Yeah.
Now, any other actor would have made this scene memorable, but the way it's played, it's more like, I don't care. It's like a shrug scene. It's like, yeah, you should feel something here, and nothing is emanating as far as character from Mark Harmon. It's just like, yeah, I'm here. It's a day job.
He was trying to be Clint Eastwood, or they want to make him like Mel Gibson, and like, oh, he's gonna be this badass with the gun in his face, and he's not intimidated till he's out of the room. Yeah, it's very pedestrian. There's no excitement.
The only time he comes off well, of course, in the romantic scenes. But better than Moonlighting. But every other aspect of his character, like you said, he can do action well. He's very athletic. But again, I think if you're going to cast Mark Harmon in a role, comedy's better for him. That's more his strength. He can be serious, but he's also got to be not talk. Like, he can give you that look, but he can't. When he's talking, it's the toughness doesn't come. I mean, I've never watched NCIS, so I don't.
The little I've seen of NCIS, and obviously he's older and more seasoned, he's not a big talker, and it works well for that Jeffro Gibbs character. Here, I mean, he was still a young guy. I mean, well, he was only like 36 when he did this movie, but, it just was like they really wanted him to be like that hothead cop. It doesn't come across.
Yeah, and I mean, Jeanette Goldstein gets as much screen time as she usually does in a movie. Like you said, the mystery almost takes a backseat to the interpersonal problems here. It's like, oh yeah, we got a murder to solve, by the way. That's the only reason we're, like, even talking to one another. Is that we're even interacting. But I have to say, strangely, like I said, maybe because, again, I didn't see it at the time, so I'm watching it all these years later. It's entertaining. It keeps your interest, up. For even its weaknesses, it's still like, it was 88, Even though for some odd reason, this and Gardens of Stone, I keep getting mixed up.
Yeah, they feel kind of similar.
Exactly. Military, Sean Connery, except one is by Francis Ford Coppola, was by Peter Hyams. I would have preferred to see the Tony Scott version of this film.
Oh, I thought I'd find it funny that the next movie he did was Revenge with Kevin Costner.
Yeah, so I'm just like, I like that it's a early version of Sean Connery in San Francisco before he returned with The Rock.
Yeah, far better picture.
Let's see.
And why is Connery, like, they're supposed to be on a stakeout at the end when they're trying to get to the water bottle company. Why is he in his fatigues when he could have easily been spotted?
I think that's the only outfits he owns are army outfits. I don't think he has civilian clothes, At least that's because everything is about war with him. So it's just like, I'm not emotional. Yes, I miss your mother. Why do you want me to keep talking about it?
And I did find, like, Jack Warden, that whole twist with him and then him getting beat up and eventually killed was kind of laughable. Maybe because I'm thinking of Problem Child.
Well, I like that he went out a hero at least, But, I kind of, it would have been more noteworthy if Marlon Brando had played the role, but I like Jack Warden in his role, because it's for once, even though he's still kind of partially a villain, at least he's not playing an asshole as usual, He's like the one who's trying to talk Sean Connery down off the roof, But at first, for some odd reason, I thought he was Mark Harmon's dad in the movie, which I thought would have been an interesting angle if they had put it in there like that.
And I feel like this was his last dramatic role because everything else is comedy after this.
And also Mark Bloom as a villain. I'm like, well, he's played him before, but I'm just like...
Well, he was coming off of Crocodile Dundee, so I think they wanted to keep him in Paramount.
Man, this was a godsend. Yeah, because I'm like, I know him more for comedy than, drama. So watching him trying to be this badass towards the end, it's just like, sit out, Mark Bloom.
Yeah, that's where it kind of falls short as the villains, except for the crazy henchman.
Oh, Patrick Kilpatrick.
He's like really fucking weirder.
Look, and you've been playing side for us, a psychopath. You think you're just gonna come out normal after that? Like, oh, who am I killing today?
The war's been over a long time, old man. Nobody cares.
Yet you're ex-CIA. It's like, hello, you're all about wars. But like I said, I think it's a it's a interesting thrill. I think this film has more depth than I think a lot of studio thrillers today. Like, this is what the general's daughter should have felt like, watching this movie. You should have that mystery, that questionable, who can you trust? These people don't get along, or even basic. And that, I don't know why I'm picking John Travolta military thrillers, but even he would have been an interesting choice at the time to play Mark Harmon's role. And
some other stuff that kind of like makes this film not so exciting. Midway through the film, as they're trying to solve this thing, you have like a long scene of Connery on the phone. You don't see who's on the other line. It's just a one shot on him, just getting information. That felt kind of cheap to me. And Harmon going to the guy's house, and he takes the knife and he scrapes the paint, seeing that the car had been painted over that was used to kill the other colonel. That was like, where's the excitement in that discovery? Murder 1600 had better reveals than this.
It's called detective work. They have to show you the boring parts of the job, too.
It's a summer blockbuster, too. This came out like the summer of '88.
This is their version of a summer blockbuster for adults.
Peter Hyams just did Running Scared. He had a car chase on the L track.
Exactly. He's like, I need to be a little more crowd.
Oh, and then find drugs smuggled inside some clay pottery.
He does not want to repaint what he just did. They'd be like, is this Running Scared 2? Except no laughs?
Well, technically, he should have done Running Scared 2 at that time.
Well, unfortunately, he wanted to be a journeyman, which he ended up being for the rest of his career.
Oh, another funny thing, speaking of Running Scared, so right around the same time as this film being shot, Connery did a cameo in Billy Crystal's movie Memories of Me, where he, in that film, Billy Crystal's dad is like this glorified Hollywood extra. So they do a scene where he's shooting a movie or a TV show, and you see Sean Connery walking past the stage in the same outfit that he wears at Presidio. Now, I have a theory that, Billy Crystal being friends with Peter Hyams may have visited the set, befriended Connery, and probably asked him to do the cameo. And I also will bet he met Meg Ryan on that set and talked to her to When Harry Met Sally.
So wasn't When Harry Met Sally before the Presidio?
No, it was after, because that was when she blew up.
Okay. Well, my thing is, it's a Hollywood circle jerk, but also, you got to keep in mind, Sean Connery also cameoed in Time Bandits. So, it's not like he was a dick, like, oh, how dare you act for free.
As long as you allow him to play his golf, he was good.
So we're like Samuel L. Jackson. And also, like, again, other than, maybe his views on women, Sean Connery was just a class act, like old school, but not like an asshole old school. And, luckily he never got into personal politics, or so it wouldn't be a Clint Eastwood situation where you're like, I like you, but your politics, man. They're fucking confusing as hell. But like I said, now I'm starting in my older age to appreciate Sean Connery more.
Me too.
Before I only knew him from a handful of films, one of those unfortunately being Family Business. So, watching his better films and better work, I respect him, and just thinking that basically he did Highlander 2 just so he could have a suit. A very suit. Those are like those stories that make him cool, and he's fucking hating Brett Ratner.
Yeah, he's a scumbag for what he did.
I know, but like, they're trying to work on a movie together, and he's like postponing production, and then he's watching him fucking in the audience at Wimbledon.
Like, dude, he needs to see the storyboards for a big underwater scene. The guy's like 70-something years old, and you're gonna just like skip off a legend, an Oscar winner, to go to fucking Wimbledon? Fuck you.
And that's when he quit the movie. Like, this fucking guy.
It was a good movie, even if it been done by a different director, like me.
Well, that's pretty much the case of most Brett Ratner's movies. It's like, oh, it sounds like it would have been a good idea with a different director, But then, where would we stick the supermodels? And That's basically what Brett Ratner brings to all of his movies. Super. Yes, you dated Noxzema girl. Good for you. It's just, do you have any final thoughts on the Presidio?
Yeah, Connery did later kind of blame Harmon for the film's failure. But I think he was fair about it, though. And Harmon, I believe, named his son after Sean Connery. So there you go.
I'm like, that's a weird connection. Like, that's fucking Harmon sent the film. Yeah, I still name my son after you, so.
Well, no doubt, after this movie, Paramount got rid of their deal with him, and then they replaced his office with Paul Hogan, and then, look, I have a Paul Hogan.
I'm like, I'm sure in retrospect, they're like, maybe we should have kept Mark Harmon a little longer. And, I mean, hey, we got worth winning. You know, but I just like, that Paramount's like, I like this guy in summer school. Like, that was Connery.
They put him in the Thriller.
I like, for that matter, hey, I like that guy who played Chainsaw. Maybe we should put it in the Mark Bloom role. We're doing that kind of thinking for the casting. Hey, I like Carl Reiner's cameo. He gets Jack Warden's role. You know? I'm just like, I was like, now see, Key and Peele should have did a skit like that. Or since they did Gremlins too, the casting decisions of the Presidio.
They should have cast the chainsaw guy from summer school as the military guy he calls about the package.
They should have had Larry B. Scott as Jeanette Goldstein's.
Oh, he would have fit this movie. He would have been perfect.
But you know, the Flash should have played the Colonel's running through the streets and gets hit by the car.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Larry Flash Jenkins.
It would have been like the Flash. Yes, rest in peace, Larry Flash Jenkins. I'm just sorry. Sometimes when you look at some of these credits and the names people called themselves in the movies, it's like, I hope that's your birthday, Larry Flash Jenkins, and not like, hey, that's my nickname, Larry.
Well, it's like Topol. I mean, it's a cool sounding name, just Topol.
Larry Flash Jenkins. I'm sure he will be at more of our deep dive.
Oh yes.
And see, we're still plugging away, Larry and Scott. We wrapped you another role. You would have been perfect.
Yes, come on the show, Larry B. Scott. We're waiting for you.
So that ends this week's Unfinished Business deep dive. So until next time, we bid you adieu.